Hello everyone, welcome to this session. In the previous session, we discussed about a one-dimensional array. This is the different ways of creating a one-dimensional array, and this is a structure which will get created whenever you create a one-dimensional array. Let's execute some of the programs for the one-dimensional array. For the execution, I'm using Eclipse IDE here. You can use any IDE as you want. I'm creating a project. Inside this, we'll create an array, and this array we are going to create for the one dimensional and to store a primitive type of values. Let's create an array of type percent of type double, which can store the percentages. I'm instantiating an array with the help of new operator, and the size we are providing here is 5. If you print a value blocks here, then we'll get a default values which is initialized by Java internally. I'm printing a value from only two index for now, but all the value blocks will be initialized with the default value as 0.0. You can initialize this value block by using an index like this. Let's say this is the value which I'm providing at the 0th index, and similarly, I can initialize other index as well. The indexes are starting from 0, and the last index will be a 4. So these are the 5 values which we are creating inside the array. Let me make a change inside this values here. These are the 5 values we are assigning. If I execute this program now, then instead of getting a 0.0 value, we'll get a value which we assign inside the value block. If you wanted to get the total number of values present inside array, then you can use a length function here. With the help of length function, you can find out how many values are there inside array. Here, there are 5 values, so we are getting 5 as output. With the help of length function, you can also get the last index if you just have to minus 1 this length by 1. And this will give you a last index of the array, which is in our case is 4. This is how you can calculate the total number of values and the last index of the array. If I wanted to get all the values from the array, then I can use a for loop and we can use a indexes to get a value from array. So if you wanted to set a value inside array or get a value from array, we can use an index. The indexes start with 0. I'm creating a variable here which starts with 0. We'll have to go to the last index, and this is the formula which we created to get to go to find out the last index. Let's print the value here. If I execute this program, then we'll get all the values from the array. It will iterate through every index and all the values will get printed here. While handling an index, you have to make sure that you are using the index correctly. If you use any invalid index, then you will get an array index out of bound exception. For example, suppose if I forgot to do a -1 here, so this will go till the 5th index and we don't have a 5th index inside array. In this scenario, we'll get an array index out of bound exception. To avoid such scenarios, if you wanted to get all the values from the array, the another option which you can use is the enhanced for loop or the for each loop. There, we do not have to provide an index manually and it will be handled internally by Java. So that is the best option if you wanted to access all the values from the array. In the enhanced for loop, we'll provide an array here and the variable in which we wanted to store all the values. If I print the value here, then we'll get a exactly same output which we got in the previous implementation with the normal for loop. This is how you can get the value from the array by two ways, either by using an index or you can use an enhanced for loop to get a value from array. This is all about array. There are another approaches also to declare a array, such as let's use a different approach here. Let me create an array with this approach. Here, we'll remove this instantiation part and we'll initialize the array. Let me initialize it with the same value which we used. I'm copying the same value. This is how you can create an array. And if I execute this, then we'll get the same output. This is the another option to create an array. This discussion is about creating a one-dimensional array for the primitive type of values. There is one option to store object type of data inside array. Let's execute the array for the object type. I'm giving name as a array for the object. Suppose if we have a student class and inside student class we have some variables, class student, and we have a student ID and student name. To initialize this value, let me create a constructor here which will accept a value and initialize it to the instance variable. We'll also create a print method to print the value of ID and the name. Let me print the value of ID first, and we'll print a value of name as well. Suppose if I wanted to create a group of objects of the student, then we can make a use of array here also. I wanted to store information of 5 students. And for that, we can create an array of type student. Let me give a name of the array is students. And this is the declaration of array. You can also instantiate the array on the same line like this. And the size of the array is 5 because, as I said, I wanted to store 5 objects inside the array. Now, we can create an object and store inside each and every index of the array. Before that, if I check the value block here now, then by default, the value block will be initialized with the default value. And the default value for the non-primitive or the object type of array is null. If I execute this, then we'll get a null value here. We can initialize these value blocks by using an index like this. Here, we need to provide an object of the student class. And while creating an object, we'll pass the values of the student ID and student name. And in the same way, you can create all the other objects and initialize it into a specific index. So let me change the ID here and the name. So here we are creating 5 objects and all of these objects will be assigned through an index. If you wanted to get all the values from the array, all the objects from the array, then we can use a enhanced for loop or for each loop, which is the better option here. And this will return the object of student one by one. And we can print the value of student by calling a print method. If I execute this, let me add a separator after printing a value of every student so that we can identify how many student records are getting printed. So there are 5 student records are getting printed. So this is how you can create an array for storing a non-primitive type of values also. Non-primitive type of values are the objects. These are the objects we are storing inside array. I hope you got this implementation. Thank you very much for joining this session. In the next session, we'll discuss about a two-dimensional array.